Hello and welcome back to another episode of Pass the Syrup, the estate agency and letting agency podcast purely for agents. If you are a consumer, as I say most weeks, turn off now because we will offend you. You don't like us already, you're only going to like us less if you watch this. As it happens, not entirely true. We've got Neil Robinson, we've got Rowan Waller, we've got Ed Taylor, three amazing agents, integrity going through the roof right now versus, earlier I was filming an episode of Chris Buckler, different type of agent. You can see why people don't like estate agents. Sorry, Chris. But three great agents, Neil, Rowan, Ed. How's it going, chaps?
Well, very good. Thanks.
Yep, very well. Thanks for having us on again.
Well, thank you for coming on. And that piece right there is my favorite part of the podcast every week, because I ask everyone, how's it going? And all three guests awkwardly, like, oh, should I talk? Is somebody else going to talk? Should I say something? That really awkward moment. That's the only fun I get to have on this podcast. Just kidding, obviously. This is the third one of the day, hence the over talking from me right now. Let's get straight into some subject matter. Rowan, coming to you first. What are we discussing today?
What are we discussing? Well, so I don't know if you've heard of a chap called Charlie Landon, who he put up a post yesterday. And anyway, this is a post, I happen to agree with the sentiment of it. So I'm not necessarily disputing it, but it was interesting. So he was talking about know the law that agents must follow when it comes to offers. And here's an excerpt from the Property Ombudsman Code of Practice for Residential Estate Agents, which says, Section 9 offers. 9A, by law, you must tell sellers as soon as is reasonably possible about all offers that you receive at any time until contracts have been exchanged, unless the offer is of an amount or type which the seller has specifically instructed you in writing not to pass on. You must confirm each offer in writing to the seller and to the buyer who made it within 2 working days. Anyway, I'm not disputing that's all a good idea, and it's kind of we're part of the Property Ombudsman, so it's the code of practice that we follow. But as far as I know, that isn't actually the letter of the law. So I tried to look it up because I remember 20 years ago doing my training, and it was according to Estate Agents Act 1979, you must put offers forward promptly in writing. But it's a bit vague. What does promptly mean? So Countrywide was saying, so we think promptly is within 48 hours. So, and I kind of always had it in my head. And then we followed the Property Ombudsman, so etc. But I just wondered, does anyone actually know anymore whether this? So when we always talk about these things, we say, well, the law is, according to the law, it's this, and you should put offers forward in writing within 24 hours. And I don't know whether it says it anywhere, or we're not allowed to go up in the loft because of our insurance. I don't know whether it's true, or is it just something that estate agents say? So there's just all these things that seem to have just become embedded in estate agency that I kind of agree with, but I don't know whether, strictly speaking, when we say it's the law, whether it is the law. And I looked up Estate Agents Act yesterday, and I went through it about 6 times, and I couldn't see anywhere about offers and how quickly you should put them forward and how you should put them forward if it is in writing. So is it in the Estate Agents Act? Is it in a different Act of Parliament? Or is it in no Act of Parliament? And if it is in no Act of Parliament, is the Property Ombudsman right to say, by law, you must? Discuss.
Wow.
You started on the nice, light, easy, fluffy material. Nice.
I didn't know I was going first.
Yeah.
You've eased us in generally. I mean, based on last time's, the last appearance, we were talking about tax and tax evasion last time. So you know how to keep it lighthearted, Rowan. I'll give that to you, mate. Ed, over to you to handle the entire response on behalf of Neil and I.
Well, that is an interesting can of worms, isn't it? If I'm perfectly honest, I don't know verbatim what the letter of the law is off the top of my head. I would have to go and have a look at it. I've always worked to best practice being within 24 hours, and that's just been something I've done ever since I've been an estate agent, really, is that was drilled into me at the big F at Foxtons all those years ago, and seems to be a pretty sensible way of going about things. Yeah, but I actually aware that we are compliant on that, but I'm not aware of how much flex we got around that. And I think, you raise a really good point there, Rowan, in that, are most of the things that estate agents say just rubbish? Because that is the perception.
I mean, it's kind of good rubbish because it works, and I think it's the right thing to do. And it is in the code of practice, so it's there for a reason. But I just can't see anywhere that the code of practice is actually telling the truth. to the letter of the law when it says it is the law.
Yeah,
And is that
and it makes it difficult for consumers then, doesn't it? And you know,
my point was, it would make it difficult if a consumer did take an estate agent to court and they said this estate agent didn't put my offer forward in writing for 4 days, and by law they should have done it. Is it actually going to cost them a load of money to find out, well, actually, by law, it doesn't say that anywhere at all. So this estate agent hasn't actually broken the law. Anyway, I don't want it to be overturned because I still think it's good practice, but I just think it's curious.
And so, Rowan, sorry, what was the post you saw yesterday? What was Charlie just pointing this out, or was he making a point?
To be honest, in fairness to him, he was pointing out about conditional selling, which is like section 9.99D or something, or 9.4, and this was section 9.1 or 9A. I can't remember how it works. So it was just that particular section, and I thought, well, actually, I'm not sure it does because I think the law is you must put offers forward promptly in writing. And I think that's the letter of the law. But I still can't find out. Apart from that's pretty much what it says on gov.uk, word for word. But that's not legislation. That's kind of an overview, presumably, of some legislation somewhere. But I can't actually find the Act of Parliament or the legislation where it is strictly written what estate agents have to do by law. And I think we should all kind of know it. I think there's some things that we all should know. And I guess that this is the point of Roper one day coming in and teaching us all what we should actually know. But once again, I'm sort of thinking, well, if what I was taught was actually the law in 2005 and it's no longer the law, like what is once we get Roper, are we then going to have to spend another 400 quid every 2 years to kind of upgrade Roper and all our knowledge and try and kind of, retain all this information that we're supposed to know by law?
So would the Ombudsman not be building their best practice or policies around exactly what the law is?
It was one of my other points as well. Is the Property Ombudsman's Code of Practice the same as the Property Redress Scheme's Code of Practice when it comes to offers? And is it the same as what the RICS says its best practice is? Because they've all got code of practices that we all should sort of somehow follow. And do we? I mean, what we should all be following is the letter of the law. And I think it would be worth knowing what that law actually is. And actually, if it's not the law, should it be anywhere in a code of practice saying by law you must?
Oh, he's
I haven't worked out. I'm not so anti following the law that I've got my own show. Neil, what do you think? Looking through your archive of data that you have available to you about the relevant laws, what does it come up with?
Well, to be fair, there's not that many laws with regards to offers that have changed of late, is there? So basically, you talked about the big F before. I'm talking about the big fat countrywide. And when I was there, and what we had to do was simply give them a ring in the first instance, put the offer forward, then follow it up on an official form. The official forms really don't exist anymore because everyone's got email. And not only that, I mean, how do you actually put it forward in writing? I don't think that's kind of specified in what form.
It is specified in the Code of Practice.
Is it?
It says by letter, email, or fax.
Oh well, in that case, we're covered, aren't we?
If that's not specified in law, then that's just a Code of Practice. They're saying by law. But what's wrong with like sending a text message? What's wrong with sending someone a Facebook Messenger message?
That's what we do. We set up WhatsApp groups for every single one of our vendors. You know, we're in it, the vendors in it, and offers get if they're not communicated orally, then they're put in there and followed up by an email from our CRM. So as far as we're concerned, it's in real time and it's covered. So I would imagine that anybody using any kind of technology, I mean, everyone's using a CRM, aren't they? So I don't see how anybody wouldn't be covered, in all honesty.
The overall sort of point here is that the legislation is often vague when it comes to a estate agency. The fact that fax is specified in there, which is like an obsolete medium of communication, would be implicit that it would imply that things need to be updated and kind of kept a little bit more relevant. And anyway, and yeah, there isn't great guidance, is there, on these things to the people on the ground.
We all know, don't we, that there's very little appetite in government to update anything where the property market's concerned. So they're certainly not going to update that.
Is there a segue there? Does somebody want to talk about government as part of, Ed, Neil, is that on your agenda for today?
No, not the
Segueing in,
government.
or absolutely not?
Yeah, well, this is. I'm going to launch my political campaign today. I will be standing in the next election as candidate for Marlborough and Devizes, and I'm up against some fierce opposition. I haven't quite decided what my policies are yet, but maybe I'll start with getting rid of any reference to a fax machine in any legislation and stand on that ticket.
I mean, I'd vote for you on that. Yeah, that's enough for me. Based on that's enough, because at least you've got very few policies that you can go back on.
Well, exactly. Don't promise you something you can't deliver.
Promise
and over deliver.
There.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. 3 bags full, sir. Ed, what do you want to talk about today, other than standing in the Marlborough and Devizes area?
Let's talk about the general market conditions, what everyone's seeing at the moment, and appreciate this isn't going out live, so things may have changed by the time this happens. But what's the general mood music out there for everyone?
Positive.
Yeah,
I've got this sense that it's positive, but my own figures not necessarily showing it's positive. So I'm doing I'm very, very active all the time, but my listings aren't coming through. And I'm sitting there thinking, God, I don't know why I'm doing all these valuations, but everyone else is listing loads. But then when I am speaking to other estate agents, they're all kind of saying the same thing. We're doing lots of valuations, but actually nobody's listing it. That's, to be fair, that's started to change in about the last 2 weeks. So it might be by the time this goes out, it's all ramped up again and kind of caught up with itself. And it might just be that kind of lag of people coming on and getting active after the new year because they're making these New Year's resolutions, and then half of them, kind of giving up the diet after 2 weeks. And the same thing goes for whether they're moving house or not. But it sort of came out and it felt really, and I think I was feeling positive because all of a sudden we were selling. So our sales rates up high. So I feel I've got lots of positive stuff to talk about suddenly. But actually, what matters to estate agents is whether we're listing or not. And I'm looking at my listing numbers going, God, I don't understand why I've only put, this handful of properties on this month. And I feel like I should have 20 properties on the market this month already. So I don't know. I've got a mixed positivity.
Is that, Rowan, you think that could be maybe down to the fact that there's so much positivity out there and there's so many people talking up the market and talking about it being better than last year, that actually your results are exactly where they should be, but you just internally you're thinking maybe there should be more results?
Yeah, perhaps I'm comparing a mental state, aren't I? I'm comparing reality to a mental state of positivity.
Possibly,
just
yeah.
Looking at perception is reality at the, just to the right of your head there, Ben.
One of my favorite lines is but then it's about getting your perceptions under control, because you could be having an absolute stonker of a month, but because everyone, we know what agency is like, this crazy bipolar opinion that people have on the market. It's either wonderful unicorns, rainbows, or it's the end of the world. So right now we're going to be at the unicorn end of the road. And so, but actually, you could be having a fantastic month, and really, all the hype doesn't mean that much. If you're speaking to other agents that are going through the same thing, we've not, in our business, month one, which is we're a mid-month to mid-month business, so mid-Jan to mid-February. We finished up last month. Very, very, I would describe it as a poor performance in terms of new listings coming to market. So that said, we're a low volume model, and so it's really difficult to compare it. In our old business, which was just very traditional estate agency, bread and butter stuff, it was easy to see, I think, compare year on year and like for like, and there was really good market comparisons we can make. But we really struggle in the fine and country model to compare with what market sentiment is and what people are saying. And, for instance, when there's an issue in the mortgage market, we're reasonably well insulated for that because so many of our buyers are cash, as an example of it's hard to get that comparison piece. But just so you all know, what day is a spring statement? 6th of March? 6th of March?
Yeah,
that's right, isn't it?
6th,
yeah.
Couple of weeks time.
Yeah, we are. Today is the 6th of March in podcast land. We're going out on the 6th of March. So
we should be definitely making predictions then.
To your point, exactly, Rowan. Exactly. To your point, sentiment could be very, very different depending on the time this gets posted at. So. All right. Well, first we'll go over to question though. Market sentiment. So, Neil, how's things in your area of the world?
We're very busy, in all honesty. I'm finding that the market at the moment, I prefer it. I'm finding that the buyers that are knocking about are more serious. So we're finding that, I mean, straight after I know we're talking a while back now, but straight after the COVID thing, when we had the boom, we found that a lot of buyers were very speculative. We were running a ridiculous fall through rate. You know, everyone thinks we were dead busy, and we were agreeing a lot of sales, but sales were falling through. Now we're finding that they're not the same. And that the vast majority of our stuff is actually proceeding to completion. In terms of listings, very busy. One of you said before about doing a lot of valuations, but not necessarily converting. Ours very much are. And I think people have just got a lot more confidence in actually going ahead and listing, because a lot of people did hold back because of a lack of other stock. They were worried about not being able to find anything to buy. And I think that has pretty much gone now. And as a result, we are finding that levels are pretty much normal. Yeah, it's good where we are.
Good. That's great. Stock coming to the market, people buying it, serious buyers, people getting the splinters out of their bum from sitting on the fence last year. Ed, what's it like in your area of the world?
Yeah, positive sentiment generally. I think I'd echo those comments in that you've got. I think we got a bit of pent up demand from last year, from those buyers that didn't buy, exactly sat on the fence, and are now seasoned buyers. And you typically get that cycle, don't you, in January, of new buyers registering who are a bit naive, haven't seen anything, just to start their search. They'll go on a few viewings and annoy you because they're like, oh, we need to see a few more, and then they go on to maturity, if you like, into the March, April, and actually put in offers. But unusually, we've got a last year's supply of buyers who are at maturity. We've got old buyers and old stock here, with a bit more confidence in the market. Stock that's sat on the market for a little while, that's maybe coming down in price to quite an attractive level, but didn't quite get there last year. And you got buyers looking at the new stuff coming on, which is maybe priced up a little bit, sort of 10%. Or whatever, compared to some of that older stuff that's been kicking around. So those old buyers and old stock, I think, is where we're doing quite a few deals at the moment. We're busy with valuations, busy with lots of new inquiries there, and also relaunching properties that were perhaps on with other agents last year that didn't quite get to a sale, but still want to sell. They've come off in November or October or whatever, and now's the time to sort of relaunch to in a better market, perhaps with a price reduction, but certainly with a better chance than they would have had a little while ago.
Good. So generally, all the hype out there there's now some substance behind it from I guess, well, 4 of us. Our performance from a listings perspective was low, but our under offer performance was bang on. Our exchange performance was above. So from in our little business, hopefully listings will catch themselves up, which I think they will. So nice positivity. You want to make some predictions? We're gonna get the crystal ball out. What's the statement hold? How are the Tories going to buy their votes?
I think that they will be likely to put in some planning, so planning based policies to ease planning for developers to perhaps convert commercial buildings and that sort of thing more easily, to up the numbers, because they've just announced in December that they're gonna sort of take the foot off the kind of the necks of local councils about house building targets and allow them to say no based on what we don't really like. That's going to change the character of the neighbourhood, which to me means anything that's going to be built on any kind of green space is going to be just so hard to come by. So I think they're going to have to do something to make it easier to build brownfield and convert disused pubs and disused shops and disused all sorts into flats and that sort of thing within urbanizations. I can't see that they can do very much on stamp duty personally.
Neil, predictions?
Well, they did talk. Rishi Sunak spoke about underwriting mortgages for first-time buyers with a 1% deposit, didn't he? That's gone strangely quiet, but I wonder if he'll bring that back. I think that could certainly help.
Did you see, or did you read, Russell Quirk's piece in the trade press? I think it was last week. His sort of what he sees going on, what he thinks will happen, and his prediction, his major prediction, Neil, is exactly that. He thinks that will be the key policy that they launch, which will act as quite intense stimulation for the market.
Well, to me, that's what needs to happen. I mean, it's all right saying we're going to build this, we're going to build that, but that only helps the builders. It may help the odd first-time buyer and one thing and another. But what we need is a stimulation at the bottom of the market to help the first-time and second-time movers and those trading upwards and downwards to be able to move themselves.
And so we in our office, when we did training, not last week, week before, we were talking about this particular policy and what the impact might be. And for the majority of the business we do, we're not really first time buyer market. But what do you think? And I appreciate I'm catching you guys on the spot here. Long term consequences of a 1% deposit mortgage product, I assume guaranteed in some way by the government. Long term, what do you think? Is this a good policy?
I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't see anything particular long term. I mean, I know that they might say that prices might drive up and one thing and another, but I can't see it happening. And certainly long term, it shouldn't matter whether you put a 1% deposit down or a 10% deposit down. That time is still going to pass. The mortgage is still going to be paid down. The property is still going to increase in value. So to me, it shouldn't really matter. But what it will do is put more people in a position to buy, which again doesn't just help the first time buyers. It helps everyone else reliant on the first time buyer to be able to move.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. It will fuel and work its way up, and it will release more opportunities up the chain. Rowan, what do you think?
I'm a little bit more worried about it as a policy. I mean, I think it would be great for the market in terms of stimulating the market, and I think prices will always go up then when the market's stimulated. But that's kind of the worry, is whether it overstimulates it when we're at a slightly low economic ebb, and if prices then do come back on themselves. We bought with 100% mortgage in 2007, and I knew we would go into negative equity because I was an estate agent, but we didn't have a deposit, so it's the only way we could do it, and we could accept the negative equity because we were fortunate enough that we knew we'd been together for 10 years already, and we kind of knew we were staying together. But I think that when we were selling houses in 2008, 2009, and people were in negative equity, a lot of those people were first-time buyers who bought within 2 years of a relationship, and now they split up, and they had no equity left, and they were struggling. And I think that's my kind of worry with it from a humane point of view, is that actually it's gonna put people in a tricky position that they might want to be in if they're only having to put 1% in. And also my other issue with it as a policy is, I suppose it's because it's underwritten by the government, but banks and lenders have to agree to take it up and offer products that apply, and they might not take it up.
What do you reckon, Ed?
Well, I guess it's certainly going to stimulate the house building market, isn't it? And if that's done with some relaxation of planning, we all seen sort of Help to Buy schemes sort of be very successful. The cynic in me also thinks, yes, we've got to build more houses, but going back to Rowan's point, are we sort of converting, existing stuff in the right way, or are they just going to bosh out a load of cheap, homes that are actually, in 10 years, 15, 20 years time, aren't going to be fit for purpose because they're really poorly built and they're not, built to last. That may be a side effect of this potentially. Certainly, a bit more supply to the market would be good. Fiscally, I guess you've got to be careful that it's responsible lending and that we're not in a point where the government's just backing, essentially backing the banks, aren't they, with that, and allowing them to sort of lend potentially irresponsibly, and they'll pick up the bill, which means ultimately the taxpayer will pick up the bill, which is precisely what happened in the credit crunch. So yeah, I guess there's a few question marks on it, certainly. That being said, I think, there's clearly a huge number of people that will struggle to buy otherwise and will struggle to get on the ladder. And that help, I'm sure, will be very, very welcome to a lot of people who can't afford the rents, because presumably a mortgage rate on on that will be lower. Certainly, that wasn't always the case in the last year, and there was a point, I think, where mortgage, your mortgage repayments might have been as much, or if not more, than your rental for the equivalent property. But that balance has been redressed slightly, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting policy. Short term, you can see that it will solve some issues. It will stimulate the market. It will create buoyancy. Longer term, I mean, you just don't know what you don't know, do you? You know, who knows what's going to happen over the next few years. But I do. The conversation we had in our group downstairs was that there's quite a lot of risk around a policy where there's so little equity in the property, and particularly first-time buyer market. If the average first-time buyer is roughly 40 years old, they are also at the stage where they're going to start to build a family, and so they very quickly outgrow the property they're living in. And you know, as we've seen, not huge examples, thankfully, of people that are starting to default on payments or defaulted last year on payments because they purchased 3 years ago or 2 years ago at the height, and that 2-year fix has come to an end and they're in a worse position. So there's a bit of risk around it if the government are guaranteeing it. I don't know if I'm making this up. The bounce back loans that the government guaranteed, they removed their guarantee from that, didn't they? And it just sort of was a policy that just floated under the radar that no one made a big deal about. I'm pretty certain that the government sort of pulled back on what they promised the banks.
I don't know whether the whether they removed the guarantee or not, but certainly you can bet that the banks would not have offered any of those loans had the government not underwritten them.
Sure.
The government wouldn't go back on one of their promises, would they? I mean, surely
it's not like that.
Well, that's gonna be a policy for Ed Taylor, candidate for. Well, never to go back on one of your promises.
I can hear your constituents in Newbury asking why you're not representing them, why you're so hung up on the other two areas.
Well, it's a good question, but I mean, I think I've got to stick to just one parliamentary constituency, which is my Malvern Devizes, and that's the way.
I mean, look, yeah, but in the interest of spread betting and getting yourself in, just do what you got to do, Ed. You know, play the politician card. Do what you got to do.
Yeah.
Do you have any predictions for the statement?
I think it'd be interesting to see how they try and win over. You know, are they just going to try and do something for their core base? You know, which is your, you've already seen in the by-elections. You know, like some fairly safe Tory areas vote. You know, in another way, are they going to try and secure their base by offering something? I don't know. Someone mentioned to me the other day that they'd heard they were considering giving something to downsizers to over 60s on stamp duty relief, which seems like an interesting one. That's like the opposite end of the scale. Someone who's owned a house for a long time, got a lot of equity in it, done really well out of the housing market over decades. Let's give them some cash. That's where it's needed in the economy.
Well, but to be fair, we had that. So that is a conversation that was on this podcast about 6 months ago. How we free up? Was it? Where
yeah,
we were talking about
I posed it in, and then I got bashed by Sam and Christian.
Christian was on it, wasn't he? Yeah.
An unnecessary and yeah, I don't know. I think it would actually. I think it's a problem that we really have, is that downsizers can't really afford to downsize because they're no longer earning. So although they've got equity, they haven't got income anymore, apart from their pensions that they might have, because they become equity rich, but they're not really cash rich.
Yeah.
So I think it would allow people. It would encourage them to do it sooner rather than wait another 3 or 4 or 5 years until they sort of have to do it, and that would free up a bit of market.
And from memory, it was Christian. Who was the other guest?
It was Sam. No, was it?
But they were landing on downsizers don't need incentives. They're emotionally tied to the property and they're less likely to move out, which I completely understand that argument. But if we had a different system of allowing them to, if it was a more free flowing system, maybe if you remove that barrier, emotion is less. Yeah, it is less the area they lean towards. So right, we've got 10 minutes left, Ed.
What's the origin of the term stamp duty? Why is it called stamp duty? I don't remember receiving a book of stamps when I bought a property. What's this all about?
It's interesting.
Apparently, I think I know this.
Go on,
Neil. Yes. Yes, Neil Robinson, Cambridge.
Well, yeah. Apparently, when they used to actually write out the deeds, they used to have to. The solicitor used to actually have to literally stamp them. It was something to do with that. It's dead boring. It's literally
Really?
stamping a piece of paper. Yeah.
Oh, you
So
could have
that's
made
the
anything
charge
up
they
there.
made to stamp it to authorise the sale or basically to confirm the sale. There we go.
Execute, maybe.
go.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, you learn something every day. Well, I'm not sure Neil delivered that with 100% confidence.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
It was first introduced in 1694 to pay for the war against France. It was meant to last for 4 years.
And
Oh,
he-
so
and-
like the window tax, was it? Another
yeah,
one?
exactly.
It's just no one's questioned it.
Which, yeah,
Okay.
whereas if you were in France, it would be questioned on a daily basis. We need a little bit of a more continental approach to how we fight government. Oh, listen to me, how we fight government. Wow, I didn't see myself saying that today.
He's an
Neil,
anarchist.
tell what's happened. This is Don't Fool To Me podcast in one day, I think. Neil, what's the final subject? Big finish. What have you got for us?
Well, I am going to be very quick on this, really, and it's more of a it's one of my usual Robbo rants, quite simply.
Lovely.
I mean, of late we started getting more corporate instructions. We're a relatively newish company. We're only 4 years old. My previous business was mainly letting, so we never dealt with corporate instructions. And I presume you will have dealt with people who call themselves new homes this, new homes the other. I'm not talking about repossessions here. I'm talking about the companies that the builders use to farm out instructions to people like us.
Mhm.
And they take the piss, don't they? They really do. So basically, I've got here a set of what I'm reading is a set of T's and C's, right? And this is one that I had the other day, right? So the fee to start with, 0.85%, right? Including VAT, which is not terrible, right? Certainly round hours, it's not overly terrible. It is less than we charge, but get this is on a £100,000 property, right? There's no mention of a minimum fee. So we've got to assume that is the fee we're getting. All right. So if you take the VAT off that, you're probably talking what, 700 quid. It's not 700 quid. Because further down from that, we have to deduct from that fee an administration charge of 295 quid plus VAT. Right. So basically you're instructing us and you want us to pay you. Right. Well, you can piss off straight away. Even further down the T's and C's, we've got that our fees will be paid not by the solicitor, but by them directly.
Oof.
And it will take 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I'm not being funny, but we all know how long it takes to list a property, to sell a property, to get the property through a month, and asking us to wait another 8 weeks. Well, that's just unforgivable, isn't it? Now, even worse than this is the absolute piss take. And this is what led me to say, we're not doing this anymore. Really was the final straw for me. Basically, by virtue of accepting just to go out to the property to do a valuation, and we're putting aside here the fact that you've got to take pictures, take measurements, they want absolutely everything. And they're asking several other agents to do the same thing. If the client decides not to go ahead with them, and instead instructs us directly within a period of 12 months, we've got to pay them 30% of our fee, right? So this is just ridiculous. I mean, I've dealt with I've tried not to deal with net agent and get agent and all that kind of stuff who basically leech off you like that. But that's just absolutely ridiculous. Look, I'm sure this is not news to you. But what I'm basically saying is that, if your other viewer is one of these people who runs one of these new home companies, basically take this as being my message to you that I'm absolutely not going to do any more business with you, and certainly not on that basis. I run my company and I decide what the T's and C's are. I don't care about volumes, not interested. It's just a case of, I just don't understand why companies like this feel that it's okay to take the piss out of us, because they're not going to be getting buttons themselves, are they? Are you finding this?
I mean, just real quick, in 20 years of agency, I've never dealt with a company that operate in this way. So I've got no experience I can offer. Chaps, experience of this sort of fly-by-night operation?
Yeah, occasionally, not anything as bad as that.
Well,
But
can I just tell you, sorry to interrupt, that's not a fly-by-night operation. They're
Really?
run by one of the big estate agencies.
Yeah,
Right?
I think I know who it is because you're giving me PTSD. So I remember dealing with exactly this, and
Yeah.
I dumped them about 5 years ago, and
Mm.
I never, so I've never done it since. And I mean, and yeah, I guess the only saving grace is that if they weren't to instruct that company and that vendor was to come to you directly within 12 months, you did have to give up 30% of your fee, you'd still probably be earning more than the £420 that you'd be earning if you were doing it through them.
Maybe, but that's not the point, is it? I mean,
No,
we're
it
still
isn't.
going to be
No,
charged
it
now a
isn't.
normal fee, and they're still
It
going
definitely
to
isn't, and I
of it.
definitely didn't.
But yeah, there's absolutely no way. And
Sorry,
basically, sorry,
Neil,
go on.
I don't think I completely understand. So, what? So this business
Mm.
have approached you
Yeah.
and have said that they are acting on behalf of this particular seller or in the sale of a development, or
Yeah, it's like an assisted purchase. So they want to buy a property on a new development.
okay,
And basically what they're doing is that they're handling I think what they probably do is they guarantee them a certain amount, and we just have to market it, and we have to go through this
okay,
company in order
sorry,
to,
all right,
yeah.
I
So
understand
basically
more. So,
they take the place of the actual vendor as our client, so to
so
speak.
we had some brief experience with someone that does something very similar who works in the sort of retirement sector.
Hmm?
And so they would help people purchase and get themselves sold. Although, I mean, limited experience, but nothing like what you've just described.
It's an
That's
absolute
absolutely insane.
disgrace. And as I said, they're owned by a big estate agent. I'm not going to mention any names, but what they do is they come at us through different imprints. So in other words, it's this company, and they seem to have several companies all doing the same thing. It's all the same paperwork and all that kind of stuff. And they come at us with different names: New Homes this, or New Homes that, or Moving this. And these are the type of T's and C's they want to seem to get away with. My worry, really, and my point in this is that there's always going to be some estate agents out there who are just desperate for the business, no matter what,
Mhm.
you know. And that's the problem. That's
Perpetuating the
it
issue.
just spoils it for the rest of us, doesn't it?
And so,
at least they're not earning any money out of it.
Well, I'm sure they are, but we are not, are we?
and so
Yeah.
this is a big agency, Neil, a well-known agency.
Yeah, they're a well-known agency with a couple of very well-known franchise brands.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Mm.
That is an eye-opener. I love learning new stuff. This is new, not very positive new, but it's still new nonetheless.
No, I know.
I do feel like that was a bit of therapy for you, Neil. This is the first time I've ever sort of spoken to you, but I can see you're like actually a lot more smiley after getting that off your chest.
Oh,
It's like you
well,
needed.
that's fair enough. But yeah, it's they're known as locally, they're known as rants, and particularly on LinkedIn, because
It's a daily occurrence.
It is a daily occurrence.
Yeah.
Oh, we've all been there. We've all been there.
It's all
I
good
like
fun.
that you've branded them. Nice bit of branding. But yeah, good to call that out. Absolutely. And we need to start a campaign to make sure no one takes on that business.
Well, I think
Nobody
the best
takes on
thing
that
estate
business.
agents
Terms have
can
to
do.
change.
I think the best thing estate agents can do is just say, look, I'm not working on your T's and C's. I run my company. If you want to do business with me, I set the T's and C's.
Oh, and what a line to finish on. If you want to work with me, I set the T's and C's. Ed, sorry, mate, you were going to get my vote, but Neil is in. Neil,
he's my hero. I mean, I stand down.
Neil has just shoveled you off, and he's got the
the
gig.
warm-up act.
Yeah, well, you said it. Gents, this has been quite an informative session. Sensible, informative, helpful, I think, to agents. Therapeutic for sure. I've learned something. We didn't get onto taxation, which, arguably a bonus. We've made our predictions, which is a rule I generally stay away from. But so today is the 6th of March. Guys, if you're still watching, I'm surprised, but thank you so much. Or listening is maybe the right thing to say. It would be great to hear whether the predictions made by this little gang were correct, because this normally goes out in the evening. So there'll be as we all know, all the analysis, estate agents giving their feedback in the trade press the following day. Let's see if we can get ourselves in there with them. Thank you, chaps. Been excellent as always. We'll hand over to Watkins for his whimsy. See you all soon.
Thanks very much. Take care.
See you later.
This is a heartfelt out plea to all the estate agents in the UK to remember that you're dealing with people's emotions when we're dealing with buying and selling homes. I think sometimes we forget that. Over the weekend, a property came out on the market on Friday, and we saw it on the Saturday afternoon, and it just fitted what we were looking for. So picked up the phone to the estate agent on Monday morning, and the estate agent glibly said, "Yeah, mate, we've got an offer on that one. I think it's going to be accepted. I'll ring the homeowner if they're going to see if they're going to want to take any more viewings or not. But yeah, it's all cushy sorted." I said, "Oh, well, please do ask if we can come round. I would like the opportunity." That was Monday. Nice young lad. We cut now to Tuesday, and nothing. No phone call, nothing. So I rang him up mid-morning. "Is so-and-so there?" "No, mate, he's on day release at college." "Is there any messages there for me?" No. "So, what's happening with this property?" "Oh, yeah, we sold it yesterday." "So were you ever going to tell me?" "Oh, yeah, we dropped the ball on that one, didn't we?" "Sorry, mate." I had a sleepless night last night, thinking whether we're going to get this round this house or not. I think sometimes and I know it's a cock-up, genuine cock-up, I've been there, and I'm sure you have as well, but we're dealing with people's emotions, and I think we need to remember that. Love you all.